Hello everyone and welcome to this video which is in our Great Engine game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a look at a very beautiful game played between Leela Zero and Zero-rofChade in the TCEC Season 22 Division P. This game is a typical Leela win, but no less pleasurable for that, as I'm sure Leela fans will agree. It's a good opening play, leads to a solid advantage. And then Leela plays on both sides of the board to just to get that extra weakness that it needs, and then strikes on the king's side and then uses an exchange sacrifice to break the black fortress. It's a lovely game, so let's have a look how it went. So it was a queen's gambit declined: d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, d5. Not a semi-Slav, Mr. Beads, not a semi-Slav. And now the move c takes d5, e takes d5, and very early here white sets up the Carlsbad pawn structure. It's typified by black having 4 queenside pawns and white having 4 kingside pawns, and also a central pawn advantage, the d and the e pawn against the d pawn, and that gives white a number of aggressive plans in the future, but black is very, very solid. So after bishop g5, c6, e3, we see that white's being careful here not to commit the knight to f3. This gives white the opportunity to play a plan of Botvinnik's, which is to play the bishop to d3, the knight to e2, and then to play f3 and e4. There's a very famous game that I've quoted a number of times in many of my books, actually, between Botvinnik and Keres, where this plan was first played, and it's very, very powerful even now. So the normal way of playing for black here is to play the move bishop e7, quite a quiet move, and then play this long knight manoeuvre in actual fact, to play the knight from d7 to f8, and having shored up the king's side in that way, black's going to play bishop e6, rook c8, and then at some stage aim for c6 to c5. That's really the classical plan. But actually in the match between AlphaZero and Stockfish, when left to its own devices, Stockfish was coming out with this idea, which was not to play the bishop to e7, but to play the bishop to d6. And Stockfish's idea was to develop the light squared bishop early and then bring the knight to d7. This didn't turn out too well for Stockfish in the match, but it is quite an interesting idea. Stockfish was typically playing the bishop to g4 rather than e6 as played here. The basic idea is that if you bring your light squared bishop out early, well, when black plays the knight to d7, black no longer needs to play the knight round to f8 in order to activate the light squared bishop. It's always activated, so you might be able to get some counterplay with c6 to c5 a little bit earlier. But anyway, this was the TCEC book. After bishop d3, bishop e6 was played. And yeah, this has been played quite a bit, this plan, recently. But normally when white's committed the knight to f3, and I hadn't really realised why this was important and why this move order was important. But after Leela's next move, I certainly did, because white plays the move f4. And this is a very annoying move for black. The key problem is that after knight bd7, which is obviously the move that black wants to play, then f5 simply wins the bishop. So black's development is very much inconvenienced there. It's also part of a typical structure which is called the Pillsbury structure, named after the great American player Harry Nelson Pillsbury. And the idea there is to play the knight f3 into e5. And this is a very strong attacking square for the knight, and then after white castles kingside, a rook can come f3 to g3. Many famous games played with this structure, and well, I've played an awful lot as well against Queen's Gambit declined type central structures. So Zero-rofChade decided that well, it was necessary to take immediate action to exchange some pieces. In my engine matches, Stockfish against Berserk, Berserk was playing this idea: castles, knight f3, bishop e7, and then after castles, knight to e8. So quite a typical idea. You try and swap off the dark squared bishops, and then you're maybe going to bring a knight to d6 and aim us for the e4 square. And maybe at some stage you'll be able to go knight d7 to f6. Really, play for that e4 square. Stockfish, however, was playing pretty aggressively, and it didn't really turn out very well. I mean, this is a very nice idea from white. If knight e5, we go d takes c5. Lovely double pawn attack there on e5 and f5. I've used this technique a lot as white as well myself. And you do notice that the move that black played on move 6, h6, it has some points, but it also has some weaknesses. Because if black plays f6, then white goes knight g6. So this is very unpleasant for black to defend. And here, yeah, this move e takes f4. You just see white's gradually massing more and more pawns on the king side. And, well, just show you a little bit more of how the game went. And you see that Stockfish really went for things in a big way, not even bothering now to move the knight on e5, because after you go f takes e5, I go d takes e5, and queen a5, g5. And, well, Stockfish was just powering through with those pawns. So very impressive games against Berserk here. So not a pleasant position for black. I mean, Rovsharder's idea was not silly at all. It played very quickly to exchange off a pair of minor pieces. And not bad at all. Queen takes c7. But now Leela played a very careful move here. And you wouldn't really notice that it was a good move until you see Berserk handling it slightly less well with white. In this position, Berserk was playing castles, and then Stockfish was playing bishop g4, pinning the knight to the queen. And the idea is that you know, a knight coming into e5 is going to be very unpleasant for black. So actually exchanging it with bishop takes f3 is a good idea. It's not equalising by any means, but it's definitely a step on the way for black. But playing queen d2 just simply sidesteps that. Bishop g4 can be met by knight e5. So castles, and now, yeah, all my engines decided really that it was necessary to play the move f5 here and stop white from advancing in the centre. Berserk tried bishop c8 once, but we get rook e1, c5, f5, queen f6, knight e5, knight d7, knight g4, rook g5, rook f4, and we've got ideas like f6 coming in, h4 coming in. Turned out to be very, very painful indeed for Berserk. And yeah, I mean, if you don't play c5, then you know white's going to play e4 and again get you know, a huge amount of play in the centre. So f5 played, you know, just setting up a static structure. But now white's got a very simple plan here, which is just going to be to advance the kingside pawn to just build up a big central mass there. And h3, knight d7, rook f3, queen c7 played by Rovsharder. King h2, knight e5, and then a very important idea. Berserk played f takes c5 in a similar position once, which is not bad, but you know, you're not getting this big kingside mass of pawns that you do after d takes c5. Now what you know, Leela's going to try and do is get rid of this f5 pawn. And then afterwards, white's just going to be able to come through with f5 and e6 and f6 and those sort of moves. It's really, the rest of the game is all about getting these mobile. So how does black defend? Well, not very easy. Rovsharder played a couple of slightly strange moves. Queen f7 was a little bit strange too, for my taste, really. I would just sort of just get the rooks and bunch them all up, really, you know, rather than play around like this. But it's there's nothing's ruined yet. Tactically, you're still fine. And I mean, here, white really needs to find some sort of way of breaking through. And I mean, h4 to h5 is the key idea, undermining the g6 pawn, weakening black's defense of the f5 pawn. But it's not really working yet. So what Leela does is very typical. It starts playing around on the other side, trying to see whether it can tease out a few extra weaknesses to make this h4 to h5 break even better. And well, against Rovsharder, this has well, a very good effect actually. So queen a4, hitting the pawn on c6, queen d7, queen b4, and this is a very nice move here. Just cutting across here, you might get a queen d6 at some stage, eyeing the f8 square, also eyeing the e7 square, and if black plays a move like c5, well, we'll just come back to b1. And then we've got all sorts of ideas. I mean, queen b5 is going to be possible sometimes. We've also got stuff like a4 to a5. We can play the rook to g2, and it can transfer nicely over to b2, for example. I mean, I had a game like this between Stockfish and Berserk, and yeah, this is what Stockfish was kind of doing, and in the end it got through. There was anything but, you know, but clearly decisive. But it's obviously, you know, quite difficult for black to deal with threats on both sides of the board. Rothschilder played king h7, which is, yeah, I mean, a decent move, defending the g6 pawn. Just you do worry a little bit about stepping into this future attack. A4 played from Leela, hinting at A5. Again, you wonder whether it's so dangerous, but actually this seemed to have a bit of an effect on Rothschilder, because it played these two moves, rook b8 and queen c7, which again, you sort of feel, where is the main threat coming? It's on the king side. I think you should be trying to shore that up rather than defending against the possible tiny threat of a5. In actual fact, queen c7's a little bit of an odd move, but it's actually a pretty poor defensive move, and weakening this the defense of the f5 pawn by moving the queen from d7 to c7, that gives Leela the chance to strike with h4. I think if you look at what were Berserk and Stockfish doing, Berserk was playing king h8, getting out of that attack, which is in principle is decent. The only problem was that what Stockfish was ending up with was this. He was playing the rook into g6, and then after king h7 playing rook f6, which turned out very unpleasantly. As always, Stockfish found probably the toughest defence, and that's to play rook bf8. Then after Berserk played queen a3, just played rook g7. Just stick the rooks, protecting each other, very solid, and then just wait. Berserk actually managed to beat Stockfish in it was a 158 move epic. Very good game actually. But still, this looked by far the best defence for Black. The idea of playing rook f8 immediately, by the way, is that if you go h4, Black's actually got this amazing idea of going rook f5, and the idea is that after takes, there's no rook takes g4 anymore as in the game, and Black's going to play h5 to h4. Not easy to break through against Black's control of the light squares there. But after queen c7, Leela played h4, rook bf8, and now another interesting moment, because Leela could have played h5, and that was originally in Leela's PV, and after h5 g5 it was playing c4, a very nice move which you see very often actually. The idea is to threaten to give another weakness and also open the c file for the white rooks. So d takes c4 gets played, and then we played gf5, and what you notice is that because this pawn on d5 has been dragged away, now all of these pawns are mobile. We're also going to be able to play e4 at some stage. And this was a pretty crazy position, which, funnily enough, Leela didn't manage to beat Stockfish in my engine games, but Stockfish did manage to beat Leela. I mean, crazy game. I'll just show you quickly how it went, but you get an idea of it. I mean, Black manages to get the queenside pawns rolling, but somehow those kingside pawns end up being the most dangerous. But it takes quite a bit of good play to do it. So Black manages to destroy that one e pawn, but we've got f6 to f7 coming in, and that turns out to be rather painful. f6, queen e6, rook e4. And now rook e7, and as if by magic, this queen and rook are linking up against the h7 square. Leela tries some checks, and manages to defend against the h7 mate with tempo, but then somehow, slightly unfairly, it turns out that these white e and f pawns are incredibly dangerous. And even more dangerous than the kingside pawns, and e7 to e8 is coming in, and it was still very, very complicated, but Stockfish pulled through on that one. But Leela in the game, Leela didn't do this. Leela just played a quiet move, bishop c2, and it turns out actually that Black doesn't really have any particular good moves to improve its position. If you play a move like a6, for example, then White just plays h5 now, and the one thing that you've managed to do, you haven't actually gained anything here with Black, but you've actually managed to weaken the b6 pawn. So if queen d7, we've got queen takes b6. So it's just a lovely waiting move, and just very, very hard to find a real strengthening idea for Black. So Rothschilder played f takes g4 here, just basically went for a slightly different defensive structure. h5, this is Leela's point. king h8, getting out of the way, and then h takes g6. a5 played just to chase the queen away from the a3 f8 diagonal. Queen a3, just staying on. King g7, and well, it looks for a moment as if black's sort of absorbed what white has done. Not comfortable that f5 might come in, but it's not possible for the moment. And you're just threatening h5 to reinforce this g4 pawn, and then afterwards you might have h4, who knows. But here this is where the exchange sacrifice comes in. And you know, what does that exchange sacrifice do? It's all about removing any barriers to the white central pawns, and there are none now. And well, these central pawns, this structure e3, f4, e5, as well as with the pawn on g6 as well, it's so strong because it gives the black major pieces no time at all to get active. You know, how can they possibly get at the white position? Even though the white king's a little bit exposed, you know, these pawns are an incredible barrier. And well, yeah, I mean, the rest of the game is all about Leela basically arranging its pieces to try and force those pawns forward, and black trying to give up pawns in order to free lines for its major pieces, but actually not getting anywhere at all. So rook e8 played, c4 takes, queen c3, very nice idea from Leela. So first of all, inconveniencing the king with this by opening up the a1 h8 diagonal, but also this move c4, d takes c4. This pawn is no longer holding back the e pawn, so now these really can all advance in unison, like sort of space invaders. So queen c3, rook gf8, king h3. We're just going to creep forward. Queen takes c4, b5 from black, trying to give up pawns, but so opening up, you know, the b file, the c file, not bad, but somehow, yeah, just how do you get at the white king? It's just not really possible. Rook e7, queen d5, and I like this very much actually. Leela just ends up centralizing its pieces. First of all, queen is moved to e4. Then after queen b8, rook d2, and what's Leela aiming for? It could take the pawn. I think if you were playing against someone and they didn't take that pawn on a4, I think you'd know they were playing with computer aid, because I could never imagine leaving that one on a4. But Leela just plays rook d5, and it's just supporting the pawn on e5, and it's threatening f5 to f6. Queen b7, bishop d3. Why does Leela play bishop d3? Nobody knows. But the idea is simply to play the move queen d4. Again, inconveniencing the king by going onto the a1 h8 diagonal. And, well, this lovely concentrated power in the centre just keep all the black pieces at bay. And a3, we've got f5. Of course, remember that, well, the pawn's going to get to a2, but the queen is covering it, so it's not automatically getting through. And, of course, we've got this threat of f6 here. So queen c8. A pin on the pawn, king h4, but it involve all the pieces, e6 check, and rook d7, and that of course is the power of the queen and rook on this line. Now we're going to get rid of this this rook on d8, and takes is so painful because it also opens up the a2 g8 diagonal, so bishop c4 check is going to be dangerous. And the funny thing is, of course, is that after queen h1 we can just go king g5, a2. We're threatening a1 queen here, because the queen on h1 is supporting it, but we've got rook e7 here, and a1 queen is simply met by rook check, and rook h8, checkmate. So queen g1 played, king h6. The king is safe, hidden both by its own pawns and also by the black pawn. And, well, Rothschilder found nothing better than to play queen takes e3. But after queen takes e3, a1, rook h7, that was curtains. A really nice game from Leela, I thought. I thought, first of all, the reaction in the opening was very sharp, this move f4, which, well, makes very clear why black can only play this bishop d6, bishop e6 idea if white's already committed the knight to f3. I thought this move was very nice, queen d2, very careful, just making sure you get the right exchange of minor pieces. You want to exchange the knight for the other knight on the central e5 square and create this massive sort of kingside pawn roller of 5 pawns. And I thought it was very, very nice, first of all, how Leela built up the game, and then afterwards, not seeing that you don't have sufficient firepower yet, and then using, the queen and the a pawn to distract black. And well, of course, the point is when the top three play against each other, those sort of tactics don't work 100%. But here against rovChade, they certainly did. rovChade's pieces got they floated over to the queen side a little bit, and that gave Leela the chance to break through with h5. And of course, the beautiful thing was this exchange sacrifice, so typical. We've seen it so often in AlphaZero Stockfish games. Just an exchange sacrifice to break an opponent's fortress, static setup, and then afterwards, the major piece is just powerless. Just because the white pawns are doing such a good job of closing lines and restricting their activity. Really beautiful game from Leela. Not going to qualify for the super final, I think, but well, still given many beautiful games to enjoy. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed the game. If you would like the game, why not give the video a like or subscribe to the channel, or even take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, full of wonderful games like this and fantastic chess tips about how to train with engines. And otherwise, thanks very much for watching the video, and hopefully see you at the next one. Thanks very much for watching.